Caitlin Clark broke 14 FIBA world records in a single tournament, led the entire Team USA in points, assists, plus-minus, and efficiency, and still got benched in 4 out of 5 games by coaches. I'm looking at you, Kara Lawson and Stephanie White, who refused to answer a single direct question about her performance at press conferences. Now, less than a month later, she is not invited to the USA Basketball Phoenix training camp at all. The veterans who were outperformed every night of that tournament got their invites. Clark did not. That is not a rotation decision, that is a pattern. And Team USA coach Kara Lawson's Caitlin Clark sabotage continues to get exposed. Let me know down in the comments below why you think Clark was excluded from the latest Team USA training camp.
Where is CC22? The United States senior national team came out, training camp starting in April, gave us the roster, named all the players, and Caitlin Clark was not one of the players named.
Let's talk about the Phoenix training camp roster, because just reading the names out loud tells you almost everything you need to know. Aja Wilson is on it. Sabrina Ionescu is on it. Nafisa Collier is on it. Stephanie Dolson is on it. Paige Beckers is on it. These are the players USA basketball decided needed a seat at the table in Phoenix. The players the coaches wanted another look at before finalizing their World Cup plans. Caitlin Clark is not on that list. Neither is Angel Reese. Neither is Aaliyah Boston. So 3 players are sitting at home while veterans who got outperformed every single night in Puerto Rico pack their bags for Arizona. Wilson, Ionescu, Collier, all of them are likely locks for the final World Cup roster, and yet they still got the call. Clark, who just won MVP of the FIBA World Cup qualifying tournament and became the youngest player to ever win that award in the history of the competition, did not.
All right, I'm going to talk about the USA basketball announcement that came out about the roster for Phoenix, the training camp coming up, and it was no Caitlin Clark. All right, it was no Caitlin, it was no Angel Reese, it was none of them on here. All right, now, I had a few messages from everybody, and they were basically just saying, like, yo, what's going on, right? Why is Caitlin Clark not on this list?
Now let's talk about Paige Beckers for a second, because her inclusion on this roster is genuinely interesting. Beckers was also in Puerto Rico. She played in the same tournament, on the same team, against the same opponents. And she gets invited to Phoenix while Clark does not. That is not a seniority thing. It is not a veteran versus rookie thing, because both players were standing on the same court in Puerto Rico less than a month ago. So whatever logic USA basketball used to build this roster, it is not as simple as we want another look at the newer players.
More strange, scratching your head decisions made by coaches after a chaotic offseason. What are we doing exactly? Stephanie White, looking at you. So, a lot of response here. Where's Caitlin Clark? A lot of, hey, yeah. What are we doing? What the F? Don't piss me off. Where the hell is Caitlin? Why ain't Caitlin gonna be there?
The reaction online was immediate and it was loud. Clark supporters ran the math pretty fast. You break more records in a single qualifying tournament than any player in FIBA history. You lead your team in every major statistical category across 5 games, and the reward is not getting invited to the next camp. People were not subtle about how that looked. The word sabotage started trending almost as soon as the roster dropped, and it was not a small corner of the internet saying it. Some people pushed back and tried to frame this as standard roster rotation, the kind of cycling that happens every camp cycle when coaches want fresh combinations and new looks at players they have not fully evaluated yet. And honestly, that argument is not completely wrong on its own. Coaches do this. It is normal to stagger camps and not bring every player to every session.
What if Caitlin Clark hasn't made this team? And what if Paige Beckers has made this team? And look, we all know after Caitlin Clark was just the MVP, holy hell.
But the timing makes that logic fall apart pretty fast. This is not 6 months after Puerto Rico. This is less than a month later. And the player being left out just put up numbers that no American has ever put up in a qualifying run. Rotation logic works fine when you are talking about a player who had an average tournament. It does not work when you are talking about someone who rewrote the record books while spending most of the tournament on the bench. The Phoenix guest list is a statement whether USA Basketball wants it to be or not. Either Clark is so locked into the World Cup roster that the coaches see no point in running her through another evaluation camp, or something else is going on, and those two possibilities lead to completely different conclusions about what this program actually thinks of her. The coaches who built this list have not explained their reasoning publicly, and the explanation they gave after Puerto Rico, which was basically nothing direct, is not exactly making people feel better about the silence right now.
These coaches, these decision makers, Sue Bird included, are trying to make a decision. Now, you heard that name I just brought up. Sue Bird. Now, what is Sue Bird part of? The UConn Mafia. That's right. The UConn Mafia. Paige Beckers. Now, what is she part of? The UConn Mafia. I'm just bringing that up.
So let's go back to Puerto Rico and actually walk through what Clark did game by game, because the headlines do not come close to covering how absurd the numbers actually got. 5 games, 14 world records, 4 times benched. And the coaching staff still could not answer a straight question about what they were watching from Caitlin Clark every single night.
5 players at a time.
Hockey subs.
Hockey subs.
Kelsey Plum with her first. Caitlin Clark on the move, over to Billings. Billings on the left-hand side, off the glass, and how dangerous is Team USA?
Game 1 was against Senegal, and Clark came off the bench. Not starting, not running the first unit, coming off the bench in a game where USA Basketball had every reason to let her loose from tip-off. In 19 minutes of court time, she broke 5 FIBA world records and put up assist numbers the competition had never seen before. 5 records in 19 minutes off the bench. The USA won going away, and the box score looked like something you would make up if you were trying to prove a point. Game 2 against host country Puerto Rico is where the coaching philosophy started showing its teeth. Clark's minutes got managed again. She stayed in a bench role, and the offense without her running it looked slower and easier to guard. The USA won, but it was not the kind of win that felt clean, because the box-and-one defenses Puerto Rico threw at Clark were actually working. Not because Clark could not beat them, but because she was not on the floor long enough to figure them out and break them down. Managed minutes against a defense built specifically to stop you is not a strategy, it is a ceiling.
There she was, staring at Kara Lawson. Stephanie White. And you know what Stephanie White said? Slow it down, coach. Slow it down. You see all the publicity Caitlin Clark's getting today? Did you see the news? Everybody's talking about Caitlin Clark. We can't have that. The transition offense, Caitlin Clark making passes that nobody in the league has ever seen before. We can't have that. Slow it down, Kara Lawson. Switch it up. We got to make everybody else shine. We don't want her. Everybody else needs to shine.
Game 3 against Italy is where assistant coach Nate Tibbetts started getting more of the offense running through Clark, and the difference in pace was immediate and visible. Clark finished that game with 12 assists off the bench and went a full half without a single turnover. When she moved into more of a leadership role in that game, the USA won by 55 points. 55. That is not a close game that happened to go their way. That is a team operating at a completely different level than the opponent. Game 4 against New Zealand was the clearest proof of everything Tibbetts was building toward. Clark started and Tibbetts ran a 3-guard lineup with Clark as the primary ball handler, paired her with Beckers as a catch-and-shoot option on the perimeter, and New Zealand simply had no answer for the speed of Clark's decision-making. The spacing opened up because Clark was reading the defense before defenders could even start their rotations, and the USA looked like a genuinely different team than the one that had been grinding through the earlier games with Clark on a minutes restriction.
What did you see from the lineup of Kelsey Plum, Caitlin Clark, Paige Beckers, Ryan Howard, and Angel Reese, and how did that group impact the flow of the game?
Yeah, I thought they did a really good job. You know, this is a group that hasn't been together very long. We've kind of mixed the matchups, mixed the rotations. We played our players a little bit longer stretches than what we had done in the first 2 games. And so I thought initially they got off to a good start. I probably played them a little bit too long of a stretch at you know, some of them got a little bit tired, but yeah, I love the creativity. I love the shooting with that group.
Across the whole tournament, Clark led Team USA in minutes, points, 2-point field goal percentage, free throws made and attempted, assists, plus minus, and efficiency. And she did not just lead Team USA in plus minus and efficiency, she led the entire tournament in both categories. Every team, every player, every country that showed up in Puerto Rico, and Clark finished on top of those two numbers across all of them. The 14 records she broke were not honorary awards for showing up. They were objective measurements of performance in a competitive international field, and she accumulated them while spending most of the early tournament watching from the bench. The obvious question, the one that does not have a good answer, is what the final stat line looks like if she starts all 5 games from the opening tip.
MVP of the tournament is none other than Miss Caitlin Clark. It's undeniable the impact she's made on women's basketball, and here in Puerto Rico had quite the showing. Her debut with the senior team, the double-double with both points and assists. And in her senior debut, she wins the TISO MVP at the FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup qualifying tournament here in Puerto Rico.
Kara Lawson kept walking into press conferences and talking about team balance while that was happening. When a reporter asks a head coach about a player who just broke 5 world records in one game, the normal response is to talk about that player. Kara Lawson did not do that. After the Senegal game, with Clark's stat line sitting right there for everyone to read, Lawson answered questions about the team finding its mode and experimenting with lineups. Not Clark's name, not Clark's numbers, just talk about process and balance and the whole group figuring things out together. 5 world records in 19 minutes, and the head coach is talking about finding mode?
I thought Puerto Rico played very, very hard, and they played hard the entire time. They challenged us with their effort, and I thought they made a lot of hustle plays to create baskets for themselves. And you know, this was more of an uneven game for us on both ends. We talked about it as a team, and I thought we had some good spots, but I also thought we had some rough spots, and that's good. It's good to have rough spots sometimes. You're able to kind of figure some things out, and we're still figuring things out.
Stephanie White was there too, and Fever fans already know exactly what her coaching philosophy looks like when Clark is on the floor. White consistently pushes Clark toward off-ball movement, slows the offense down, and runs sets where Clark is not the primary decision-maker initiating everything. That is her system at Indiana, and it traveled with her to Puerto Rico. So you had 2 coaches on the same staff, both with a documented preference for limiting how much of the offense runs through Clark, and both of them watching her break records in real time while sticking to that preference anyway. Picture this. Tibbetts runs his 3-guard lineup, puts the ball in Clark's hands, lets her push pace, and the offense operates at a completely different level than anything Lawson or White were running. Then the next game comes and the staff reverts back to the slower, more structured approach, and the team looks ordinary again. This happened more than once. The contrast was not subtle. It was right there in the flow of the game, and the coaching staff kept choosing the version that produced worse results.
Scorer for this New Zealand team with 6 points to go along with 3 boards. Kelsey Plum, look at that steal, hands it up to Caitlin Clark, and Caitlin Clark gets it done.
After Clark broke her 14th record across the full tournament, reporters went back to Lawson with the same basic question. Do these numbers change how you plan to use her? Lawson's answer circled back to balance, to everyone contributing, to not building the whole offense around one person. And look, that philosophy sounds reasonable when you say it out loud in a press conference. Coaches talk about balance all the time and nobody blinks. But you cannot say everyone should shine equally while benching the player who is leading the entire tournament field in efficiency and plus-minus, not just leading Team USA, leading every player from every country in the whole competition. That gap between the words and the numbers is where people stopped giving Lawson the benefit of the doubt.
Well, I mean, look, dude, she's the singular offensive engine talent in the history of the sport on the women's side of the game. And when you take it to the men's side, I always say it all the time, her vision and playmaking is on par with anyone I've ever seen.
Lawson also missed certain games during the tournament, which fed its own round of speculation online. And those absences combined with the press conference non-answers gave critics a clean and simple narrative to push. The numbers never argued against that narrative. Not once across 5 games did the box score come back and say, actually, the conservative rotation was right. Every single time Tibbetts ran Clark as the primary initiator at pace, the results were better. Every time the staff pulled back to the slower system, the offense lost something visible.
She absolutely slaughtered the unrivaled ratings. I mean, put them to complete shame. That it's not her, it's everybody thing is completely done, okay?
The coaching staff had a real opportunity after Game 1 to just be honest about what they were watching. Acknowledge the records, acknowledge the performance, give Clark her flowers publicly, and adjust the rotation to match what the data was already screaming. They passed on that, kept the messaging vague, and now the Phoenix roster has dropped without Clark's name on it. So the people who were already suspicious have one more piece to add to the pile. Before this gets called a full conspiracy, though, there is actually a version of the Phoenix snub that works in Clark's favor, and it is worth sitting with for a minute.
Caitlin is the most unique driver of offense I have ever seen in the women's game, and the core of that is ball in hand, right? Because of the way she manipulates the defense, because of the way she creates pace, because of her get-ahead passes, because of the threat she is with, off the dribble, pick and roll game. So it's for me, the center of the FIBA offense always has to be ball in hands for Caitlin.
Here's the other way to read the Phoenix roster, and it actually puts Clark in a stronger position if it holds up. Training camps at this stage of the USA basketball cycle are not really about confirming who already made the team. They are about evaluating combinations, testing lineups, and getting extended looks at players the coaches have not fully figured out yet. If you already know exactly what a player brings, and you are confident she is on the World Cup team, there is no reason to fly her out to Phoenix for another round of evaluation.
Honestly, I don't think it's anything to panic over. All right, usually, if I'm not mistaken, they switch up the lineups just in case somebody gets injured at the end of the season, can't necessarily make it. Whatever the case may be, they just test a lot of players, and they get a solid backup lineup. They get a solid, for sure lineup, right? So I wouldn't necessarily look at this as the end-all, be-all.
So picture this. Clark has now handed USA basketball 5 games of data, 14 world records, and a statistical profile that no other player in the qualifying tournament came close to matching. There is genuinely nothing left to evaluate. The coaches watched her break records while sitting on the bench in 4 out of 5 games, watched the offense transform every time Tibbetts put the ball in her hands, and watched her finish on top of the entire tournament field in efficiency and plus-minus. What exactly would Phoenix show them that Puerto Rico did not already answer 10 times over?
Monique Billings, Michaela Blakes, Cameron Brink, Paige Beckers, Ray Burrell, Veronica Burton, Afisa Collier, Steph Dolson, Rakia Jackson, Azrae Stevens, Brittany Sykes, Kayla Thornton, Juju Watkins. You're looking at the names listed, and none of these names are better than Caitlin Clark.
If that logic applies to Clark, it probably applies to Reese and Boston too, and that changes how the whole Phoenix roster reads. All 3 players missing from the invite list could already be confirmed spots on the World Cup team, players whose cases closed in Puerto Rico and do not need another audition in Arizona. The camp becomes a non-event for players the coaches have already made up their minds about. Now look at Beckers getting that Phoenix invite with fresh eyes because it does not look the same way twice. Beckers was in Puerto Rico. She played in the same tournament, against the same competition, on the same team as Clark. And yet, USA basketball still needed to see more from her in Phoenix, which means the invite is not a reward for what she did in Puerto Rico. It is a sign that the coaches are not fully sold yet. They need more looks because they are still working through their decision on her roster spot.
Now, that raises questions. Why is Paige Beckers there? All right, that's the one that's people are trying to figure out. Well, Paige is there. Why has she got to be there? If all these other folks aren't there, that leads you to believe that Paige Becker's in jeopardy of not making this team.
That completely flips the narrative. Clark skips Phoenix because she already answered every question the coaches had. Beckers goes to Phoenix because she still has questions to answer. The player who got invited to the extra evaluation camp is the one whose spot is less certain, not more. Here's where it gets interesting, though, because this interpretation only works if you trust a coaching staff that spent the entire Puerto Rico tournament giving the public zero reason to trust their communication or their decisions around Clark. Lawson dodged direct questions about Clark's performance across multiple press conferences. White kept pulling the offense back toward a slower system, even when the faster one was producing obviously better results. So when those same coaches make a roster decision that could be read as a quiet vote of confidence in Clark, it is hard to just take it at face value without asking what else might be going on.
Oh, Stephanie White, you just can't get out of your own way. Yes, Fever Tip fans, they're realizing we made the team. We made the team, Kaylin. I'd love to come, but I got things to do. I'm actually preparing for the season.
If Clark is already locked into the World Cup roster, the Phoenix camp turns into a Beckers audition. And the real question sitting underneath all of this is what role Beckers is actually being evaluated for. Are the coaches trying to figure out how she fits alongside Clark in Tibbets's 3-guard pace system? Or are they evaluating her as a potential starter in a slower, more structured offense that does not center Clark as the primary initiator? Because those are two completely different roster constructions, and whichever one USA basketball commits to will determine what the 2026 World Cup team in Berlin actually looks like on the floor. The real answer to the Phoenix question does not come out of who got invited to Arizona. It comes out of what offensive system USA basketball runs in Berlin in 2026. And right now, nobody outside that coaching staff actually knows which direction they are leaning. Clark broke 14 world records while riding the bench in 4 out of 5 games. Any coaching staff that sees that number and still goes back to the slow, distributed system that produced worse results every single time it ran is not making a basketball decision anymore. Let me know down in the comments below why you think Clark was excluded from the latest Team USA training camp. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next one.